Happy Sunday. You see it, Zero Trust Day. How's everybody doing on this Sunday? Shout out to Hillman in the house, getting in early. Hope everybody's having a good weekend. Trying to get motivated. Let's see. Start. Whew, as always, struggle streaming. Make sure it's coming up. There we go. Once again, shout out to Helmet. Whew, man. Yeah, Monday's almost here. I'm like, oh my God, I gotta get ready. I gotta go in the office tomorrow. It's all good though. It's all good. So while people filing in, I usually go over the videos I did this weekend. I think I only did one. I've been kind of working on my AWS search. So that's going super well. So just grinding on that. But I did have this one I thought was pretty good. Let's see if it shows up. See, tech jobs rescind offer. So a lot of it was quite a few. I'm gonna say a lot. A lot of college seniors got job offers. You know, they graduate. Then coming up when they graduate, when they're supposed to be hired, the tech firms are rescinding their job offers. I thought that was horrible, man. You somebody think they got a job, they could be buying a very expensive apartment somewhere. If you get a job in New York, Cali, or one of the big fangs, you could be spending a lot of money getting ready to go out there. Like I said, getting your apartment, get your accommodations. If you got furniture, you trying to move out there, right? Then I sell your job gets rescinded. So I thought that was crazy. So um, and two, if you made some purchases, should the job refund you your money, right? Because you made those purchases, you know, on the thought that you had a job, that you were going to be employable, right? That you were going to be employed, right? So I just thought that was crazy. So if you bored, check it out. It was super short, but I thought that was an interesting article. So then coming up this week, I probably go live. The death of the programmer. I'm gonna do that as a video. You know, you got to try to make them snappy. Like, see what's so, folks could be moving states too. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's crazy, man. You could be moving states, and you could be moving from one end of the country to the other. That was, you know, rescinding jobs. I thought was crazy. Does this mean it's going to be harder to break into the cybersecurity now, Kevin Lopez? No, it was just certain segments. I think the cybersecurity job market is still super hot. I've been starting to maybe start looking myself now. Kevin, that market is pretty good. The issue with getting in security is, you know, your credentials, how much experience they want you to have. But as far as the open jobs in that market, Kevin, I think that's good. Shout out to the casual economist for joining us. So yeah, what's up, MVM? So we get started, but like I thought that was tech jobs rescinding offers. Like I said, was it. Yeah, Kevin, a lot of people been talking about it. I think I saw the big guys talking about it. Black Heights was talking about it. I want to say what's the other big guy? I can't even think of his name. He was talking about it. Recession and some of the tech jobs, or I wouldn't say it's recession in tech, but I think starting to level off a little bit. What's up, Kayla? Glad you could join us. But yeah, check that out again. Tech jobs rescinding. So I guess if you got an offer, I don't know, get it locked in, get it in writing. I don't know, get a bonus or stuff. So if they take it, you know, you won't be left, you know, holding the bag high and dry. So yeah, I'm just trying to think about if I took a job offer and it got rescinded, what's the play? What's the move, right? Or is what it is, right? So I thought that was crazy. Once again, check that video out. That was interesting. Um, so yeah, so this is the one Zero Trust, AWS Zero Trust Architecture. Let me get this out the way. NIST. Let me get my big head out the way. NIST 800-207. We're actually going to look at the NIST documentation. If you're new here, and I know most people here know who I am, I'm Professor Black Ops. I've been in IT for 30 plus years. I've been in cybersecurity for about 15 plus in different capacities. I worked for DoD for 10 years. So that's where the NIST comes from. I did federal compliance, and I currently do that now. I'm a security analyst / security engineer / assurance. I do a little bit of everything. So I work for a large state, and we report to the IRS. So let's see what my man engineering cannabis is in here. Data's still getting hot. I get more calls. Companies trying to predict and track how their business can move during a recession. Now, yeah, shout out to that. I was thinking about you. AWS has a data analyst certificate and I think a machine learning certificate as part of their specialty certification. So it made me think about you, engineering cannabis. I'm not taking that one. I'm studying on my sysops right now. So AWS has a ton of stuff. So Zero Trust was actually it's actually a framework. Once again, we're going to dig into it. The weird thing is Biden actually put that in his executive order for government agencies to actually start moving to zero trust. And I don't think I've ever seen a president mention a framework or even or technology. Usually they like, we got to secure the country, or we got to do this at a high level, right? Or we got to lock it down. I've never heard a president actually name a framework. So zero trust. So now everything's zero trust, right? Anything you buy now, right? Everything's got zero trust on it, right? The vendors wants to sell you zero trust. Zero trust is not one architecture, right? We're gonna get into that. It is a framework, right? So on the NIST 800-207 zero trust, these are the tenets. Then we're going to actually go out to the NIST 800-207 website and just kind of look at the context, right, of the things they're talking about there that's in there, right? So tenets of zero trust: all data sources and computer services are considered resources. All communications is secure regardless of the network location. Access to individual enterprises are granted on a per session basis, right? So when you log on, what security do you have for that session, right? It's not like I log on and I get all this security and I can do all these things, right? For this session, I'm doing an audit. For this session, engineering cannabis is doing some machine learning, right? He needs to get to this specific database for this specific day, right? So now if somebody hacks you, they don't get all the things you get access to. They just get the things that you had access to at that particular time, right? So access resources determined by dynamic policy, including the observable state of the client, identity, application services, requesting asset, and may include other behavioral environment attributes, right? So let's break that down, right? So dynamic policy, observable state. So when I log in with my laptop or my phone, what is the state of that? Is it all patched up? Am I missing a patch? Am I Windows version 1 behind, right? So now, depending on that, I can assign risk to that workstation or that phone, right? So now that's dynamic, right? Including other things as what you're requesting to. So if that risk is, I'm not 100% patched, it's 90%. So I could get to the HR database, but I can't get to the machine learning database, right? They got all the corporate jewels in it, right? So depending on the dynamic policy of what my asset is at a time means what can I get to, and also environmental attributes. When you log in, I knows what locations you're at by IP. Am I in the right state for me to do work in? Okay, I'm in Indiana doing Indiana work. Okay, it said I'm coming in from Ohio. Am I on vacation, right? So due to that location, right, I might sign a different risk to that particular asset, right? Enterprise monitor ensures integrity and security. All resource authentication and authorization are dynamic and strictly enforced by access allowed. An enterprise collection of much information as possible. Current state of assets, network infrastructure, communication, and security posture. Just like we talked about. When I log in with this, what is the risk? And we'll see that of that particular device, right? So let's go out to that website real quick. I think I had it linked. So here it is. I'm kind of weird. I go out and read these type of documents all the time. I think it was on struggle security. What's my what's my superpower? You're 100% correct. It's that on steroid, conditional access policies. Well, you're correct. You're correct. And I'm going to actually get into that further in there, but you're correct. Conditional access policy on steroids, right? Because I do a little Azure, and Azure is really big on conditional access. But now, like you said, we're adding more attributes to that conditional stuff. It used to be, okay, am I logged in? Am I on MFA? Right? Then, depending on that, we call it, is it an agency-owned equipment? You usually get 2 or 3 of those requirements in MVM. Now we got like 20. Okay, I'm on the network, MFA, but that's not a corporate-owned equipment. So should I let it in? Right? I don't recognize that equipment, so I think it's much more attributes going into the conditional access now. So, oh, 100%. That's one of the tenets. Can you implement single sign-on trust? Right, so, oh yeah, that's and I'll get into that. Yeah, you really need single sign-on, because when I sign into AWS and I MFA, if I'm going to a database and to an EC2 instance, I'm going through AWS config. Right, I got a billion AWS services, so they really only want you to log in one time. But like we said, all those conditional access lets us know should we be able to get to all that. But yeah, definitely single sign-on on JAM. It's definitely in there. All right, and 2 is, and we're going to get there too, is we're going to talk about multi-cloud. Then even into their multi-authentication. So I logged on my laptop, I logged on to the network, right? I MFA in, right? Then even though I'm on AWS, it's connected to the corporation's Active Directory, right? Every corporation has Active Directory, right? So now I seek by security roles and assets in Active Directory to my roles and access on AWS, right? So I don't have to log in, but I map them together, right, JM? So no, definitely you want to do single sign-on. Where the trap order, facts on all of that, right? And we're going to talk a little bit about that coming up in VM. Part of that is we're going to talk about Cognito, which is an AWS service. When you log on with your IP and your username, they go out to a dark web website to see if your IP is known as a bad actor, or if they believe your email, whatever you're using on the sign-on, has actually been hacked, right? So that's actually going to definitely be in there. Cognito has a service, I think it's called predictive behavior of your passwords, and it goes out on the dark web and sees if it believes that credential or that IP range has been spoofed by the bad guys. So you write on MVM. Oh, so let's look out there. So when you go out there, let's make this a little bigger for the old people like me. So Zero Trust, this is for the government. Once again, I worked 10 years at DOD, actually 11 plus. So Zero Trust. So we're just going to look at the abstract real quick. Term for evolving cybersecurity paradigm. Move from static to network-based perimeter that focus on users, assets, and resources. A Zero Trust Architecture, ZTA, uses Zero Trust principles to plan industrial and enterprise infrastructure and workflows. So the cool thing is in there that I liked is, and I always tell people I like to play with the big guys, right? We're doing was that enterprise, industrial, and enterprise infrastructure, right? We're not doing small things, right? That's how we're going to get the bag. We're doing enterprise infrastructure, right? And the workflows. Zero Trust assumes no implicit trusted grants on assets or user base solely on their physical or network locations, local area network versus the internet. So in the old days, when you logged in the internet, you were in your network on-prem, you were in there, right? There was really no extra security. You were behind the firewall. You were good, right? We just trusted you that you were on the corporate network. You were good, right? That's like null and void now. And part of that whole network is you're working from home, which is extending the network, and you're on the internet, right? So it's not you just in the corporate network anymore. And discrete functions performed before a session or enterprise resource is established. Zero Trust is response enterprise network trends that include remote users, bring your own devices, cloud-based assets that are not located within an enterprise-owned network boundary. Zero Trust focuses on protecting resources, assets, services, workflow network accounts, etc., are not network segments, as the network location is no longer seen as a prime component of security posture of your resource. Right. So that means, right, the network has expanded to the internet and expanded because you're working from home, right? So we're just gonna look at one more other thing. Once again, I'm gonna put this in the description. I don't think I did, but I'll make sure I get that in. So we're just gonna look at the table of contents. We just looked introduction, the tenets of the zero trust. That's what I put in the slide. Local components of zero trust, enhanced identity governance, micro-segmentation, network infrastructures and software defined perimeters, device agents and gateway, enclave, portal based, application sandbox. Then these are scenarios and use cases. Enterprises with satellite office, multi-cloud, cloud to cloud, enterprise threats. What additional threats do you handle when you do zero trust architecture? Subversion of the CTA decision process, denial of service, stolen credentials or insider threats, visibility of your network, storage and system networks, reliance, and use of non-personal entities in a ZTA. They talked about zero trust architecture and integration with existing federal guidance, NIST, TIC, trusted internet connections. Here, talking about migrating zero trust pure. Most people are going to have a hybrid, right? Identifying your actors, identifying asset owned equipment, key parameters, formulating policies, and candidate solutions, and expanding your ZTA infrastructure. And that's kind of what we're going to talk on at a high level. So that's it. Once again, I'll make sure I get that in there. By because of my work, I had to read. This wasn't bad. This was just 60 pages. It's a lot of graphs in there, but just to get what the federal guidance of ZTA is for a certain organization. So this actually is, even though we're talking about AWS, I actually really enjoy, and I do a little Azure, of how Azure actually broke this down for their particular zero trust for Azure, right? So I took a lot of these and put these actually in AWS. So, and once again, it's a framework, so it's not one size fit all. So traditional is basically how it is today and a little few extra features. So what is traditional? This is where most organizations are sit today. Like I said, zero trust is a framework and a journey. On premises with static rules, some single sign-on, limited visibility into device compliance and cloud. Logins, it's usually a flat network infrastructure result in broad risk, right? So that's kind of it. Let's see. Yep, we talked about that. Where the trap was, yep, I talked about that. So then two is the advanced is at this stage, organizations have begun their zero trust journey and making progress. Hybrid identity and fine-tuned access policies are getting access data apps and networks. Devices are registered and compliant to IT security policies. Networks are being segmented and cloud threats protections are in place. Analytics are starting to be used to assess under user behavior and proactively identify threats, right? So now in most organizations, a lot of big ones are using Windows Defender. I'm gonna do one where we're doing Cisco Duo. A lot of you people use Cisco Duo for MFA, and so we're gonna talk about how you do that, right? To get your device registered to your company, right? We want to make sure we understand this device is controlled by us when it gets on our network. Then when we get that risk number, we know we control it. So with that risk, we can say what back end resources can you get to, right? So that's how and why you want to do that, right? Greetings, Big Pontiac. Glad you made it. Struggle security right on cue. Then the second part of the zero trust is optimal, right? That's the big companies. Shout out to Struggle Security. That's kind of what he deals with. Organizational and optimal stage have made a large improvement. Cloud identity and real-time analytics and dynamic gate access to application, workloads, networks, and data. Data access decisions are governed by cloud security policies engines, sharing and secure with encryption and tracking, right? So, especially from the federal level, you want everything encrypted and transiting in motion, right? Even in memory. So that's the big thing. Trust has been removed from the network entirety. Micro cloud perimeter and micro segmentation encryption are in place, right? So usually, once again, we used to have a three-tier network. You get in a protected zone. It was kind of locked in. Now, even inside a protected zone, we got micro segmentation, and we got some slides coming up with that and what that looks like. Automatic threat detection, response, and limited, right? Everybody knows yeah, shout out. It's the hot buzzword. So, two, what does that look like? All right, and we're going to talk about those advanced techniques and shout out to FireEye. They're one of the big guys. You get them on their network. They got intelligence from all their sites around the world. They getting that in their data center into their engine. Then that engine puts out to their customers, and you get real time TPT analysis, attacker analysis, red team attack is included in there. So when they see a file and they recognize it, they're quarantining for you, right? That part is automatic threat detection and response, right? So that's kind of a small built-in SOC, right? SOCs are still useful, but I'm not looking through a billion lines of code, right? You got shout out to engineering academies in there. That's where you got the machine learning and AI. They know this type of attacks look like this. This type of attack is going to go to this. Load balancer is going to do this, and it's going to pivot over to your Active Directory. It's seen that attack, and it's going to know it's this APT 21 group, right? It's going to shut down an attack, right? Because you use an automatic threat detection and response, right? So that's where you want to get to. That means you're at the top of the ultima, right? So when I work with my clients, that's what we're trying to get. But it's a journey, right? Smaller clients are not going to be able to afford all that, right? So it's steps of how you want to implement zero trust, right? It's not it's a framework. It's not a particular technology. Shout out to what Struggle Security said is it's a buzzword, and those guys get paid a bunch of money to master it. Can you use a AAA server to control things on your network? Yeah, I think that's a little older technique, but you can definitely do that. Once I said, I think we were doing that in 2000s in DoD. But yeah, I think that will put you, if we go back to the chart, I always like that at Microsoft. That's going to probably put you more traditional. JM, I think that's I ain't gonna say an older technology, but that AAA, how long that AAA server been out there? 15 years, JM? Google that, man. I think that's been around for a long time. So I think that's more traditional, right? And I think it's more of a static from network, reading your static subnets for that AAA server and how that moves. So, but yeah, no, that's definitely in there, right? And I think that'll be the first part, getting your journey going in the right direction. Right? So we're going to start out with identity. Pre-zero trust, device management isn't required. Single factor authentication, capability to infer strong identity existence, data classifications, and information protection. Right. So now what do we got? Strong identity is verified and enforced. Right. We got MFA. A lot of people are using biometrics, retina scans, iris scans, fingerprint scans. Right. This is where we're trying to get to. Passwords are eliminated in favor of biometrics, right? So I think that's going to be the big push in the next 10 years, right? Access to application and data is limited to minimum required to perform jobs and your job functions, right? So that's what we got to get to is I hate when I go in class and they say, yeah, we mimic people's permissions off of other people. So if you coming in, we say, oh, mimic you like this person because he has your job. I go, well, that person's been around 10 years. Didn't he have some special projects? I go, yeah. I'm like, well, he just got all those extra permissions y'all never got rid of, right? So we want to make sure we are limited to the minimum things they require to do their job. Verified devices. This is a big thing now, I think, is client device health is enforced. Unmanaged devices have secured alternative access methods. Users do not have administrative privileges on the client device, right? For me, too, is since I work for the government, we don't let unmanaged devices on our network. If it's not controlled by us, you can't get on our network, right? When I was at DoD. So verify access. The internet is the default network in our Microsoft location. Network segmentation are built into your job role. So with this job role, I can only get to this part of the network, right? shout out to engineering campus. I'm not in machine learning, so I should not need to get in those databases, even on their networks, or even in those segments where those jobs are at. Let's see what my man's saying. I'm heading down 10th Street now for a meeting because one discussion. See, I've been reading up on them for months now. But let me know. I was going to drop the link, but since you're driving, I got some slides or some stuff you can have if you need it. Struggle to help you with your research. I got 4 videos. I did an excellent Q&A with Person Centered Cyber. So if there's I know you on top of it. If you need anything from me or you want to chop it up about it, let me know. Struggle Security. We can always get on the phone on the back end and talk about it. If you got anything or questions, or hell, I don't know everything, but just let me know. I got 4 CTA videos. Let me know. But yeah, to discuss topics I read up on mine. Indeed. Yeah, hit me up on LinkedIn, man. Like I said, if you want the slides or I got 4 videos on it. Let me know. And I got that Fed life in me, Struggle Security. So I got it from a DoD perspective and even from an IRS Pub 1075 from federal clients. So once again, we're going to verify the service, application service, and accessible directly from the internet, right? So, and 2 is this the part unprivileged, right? We talk about the MFA, and my man just mentioned it on conditional access. We got location, device, user application, risk, and exceptions, right? So the risk is, and we're going to show a picture of that. When I look at your workstation or your phone or your iPad, if you don't have if you're behind one Windows version, what is the risk of that version getting hacked, right? Are there CVEs on it, or are there known security vulnerabilities, or are we just missing some new features, right? So that's part of the risk of that, right? Then part of that exception too is if you need to get on your network and you're not patched, if you need to get on a network, somebody's got to fill out exceptions to see how you got on the network, right? Then 2 is like my man said, we were talking about the conditional access, allow access or block, right? I'm all about the block. If you missing something, I'm not letting you on, right? But once again, we got the risk, so we can tell you too, it's not all or nothing. I could let you into the HR, but not into the machine learning part, right? So it's different risk on how we want to do that, right? Because my man was talking about that, right? Conditional access. So that's what you get. So yeah, hit me up on LinkedIn. Like I said, I can give you some slides. You want to talk? I can give you everything I got. I got a ton of stuff. I don't know what kind of client it was. You don't have to get that away, but that 800-207 was pretty good from this. It was only 60 pages with a lot of pictures on it. I thought it was a nice introduction, and especially if you're dealing with a federal client or a client that has some reporting to a federal agency or government. So Zero Trust, this is kind of from AWS perspective. It kind of reiterates what was on 207. Basic principles on verified trust. We were talking about that. In order to trust, you must first verify. Trust eliminates the inherent trust that assumes inside a traditional corporate network. Just because you're on a network doesn't mean you're secure. Zero Trust Architecture reduces the risk around our environments by establishing strong identity verification, validating device compliance prior to granting access, ensuring least privileged access only to explicit authorized resource. Zero Trust requires that every transaction between a system, user identity, device, network, and applications are be validated and proven trustworthy before a transaction occurs. In an ideal zero trust environment, the following behaviors are required. So now, right, it's just not the person, it's the person, user identity, device, network, and the application you're trying to go to, right? So all that together is going to help you with your identity to see if you get into the network or even if you can get to that resource. I might let you on that network, right? But I'm only going to send you to non-critical information, non-critical systems because of the risk of your location or you missing a patch or your MFA look funny in the background, right? So now I can, with those, I can put a risk to it, right? So let's see what my man said. The zero trust utilized tokens like, oh yeah, definitely. Especially in AWS, it's called STS. So when you do MFA, you get a short-term token to move around, and I can give you that short-term token, JM, for 2 hours, 4 hours, or 8 hours. So yeah, that's the cool thing about all this stuff is even though it's new, it's based on old techniques, right, and foundational things. Kerberos has been around for forever doing tokens, right? Hell, I've been doing couple. That's got to be at least 15 years old, right? Kerberos has been around forever, so that token movement is been around ever. But now when I do MFA or I assume a role, right? So instead of give you that token for all day, I'm gonna let you assume a role for 4 hours to do some auditing. Inside that role, basically, is a token like Kerberos. It says this token is good for 4 hours. He's gonna run around. It's gonna expire. Then when that token expires, he has to request just-in-time security. All right. So I can give you that role again for 4 more hours, but I'm gonna need to put that time requirement back on that role to let you do your job, right? But it's like you said, James, it's the same thing. It's just a token. Once again, the model identities are validated. Once again, we talked about MFA. They want to eliminate passwords. Go biometric. Devices are managed and validated for health. Device health is validation is required. Telemetry is pervasive, right? Telemetry is used to understand the current state, identify gaps, validate new controls, robust standardized auditing, monitoring, telemetry. Right? So that's really, from my point, logs, right? I got logs for everything. AWS has a gazillion logs, right? But with that logs too it's for hacks, it's for monitoring, it's for guard duty. I could go in there and look for that. But what it also does that a lot of people miss is I have a baseline of what usually goes on in my business, right? So if I send most of my pay files at the end of the month, I'm paying people or I'm paying vendors, right? After a while, it should know at the end of the month, these 3 days, that's when the pay files come out. So if a pay file come out 2 weeks ahead of time, right, I can alert that or I could block those pay files because that's out of the behavior of my baseline network, right? Now that's the top. We just looked at that. That's optimal, right? That's at the top of the game, right? I'm taking the behavior analysis of my network, right? That's where you want to be, right? So when if an adversary gets on there and does something out of ordinary, your network will be like, "Nah, I'm blocking this. This is out of the ordinary," right? So that's where you start getting an artificial intelligence and machine learning in your network. And the last part we always talked about that least privileges. Limit you only to the access you need to do at the time you need to do it, right? With segmentations and specific resources, right? So that's where really you want to be, right? Those two things, right? Give me your job when you need to do it just in time. And I know the behavior of my network to block anything that's out of the ordinary, right? That's when you ultimately at the top of your game. Let's see what Kaylee has to say. Yep, 100% correct. They just give it a cool word. But for them, though, especially in AWS and Azure, they have so many logs that you can get down to such crazy detail, right? I'm in lab on this, so I'm doing a lab and I'm gonna set it up where I set up a web server, straight Apache server, right? I set up 1 minute log so that once I stepped go, somebody kept scanning my AWS resources, which is known. When you open up a port, if you don't realize it, you can scan a ton. So what I'm gonna do is, as those resources that aren't approved by me, even though they're scanned and they're not getting on my network, I can take those IPs, know that they're not mine, and I can actually put those in my NACLs, which is a firewall for my subnet, and I can actually block those particular IPs before they even try to come into my network. They scan, but I just picked up their IP off the scan. I can block them, right? But that's the telemetry, right? But you're right. That's the cool word. Okay? That's the one thing about IT I hate. They could just say logs, right? But no, you're right. That is the logs of anything Azure, AWS, Google, right? Everybody's logging everything. If you look at the bottom of that, visibility analytics, right? That's the logs, and you taking an automation, right? So if we look at the front part, that's what we're talking about here, identities, right? So identities, identity provider, we talked about MFA, user session and risk, device risk and compliance, and device identities, right? We need to know every device that we own because we need to know should we let them in. Shout out to James on those devices. We usually have corporate tokens. So when their devices log in, we get those token off those devices. We know they're agency controlled. resource, right? So at the front, we're talking about identities. In the middle, we're talking about policies, organization, which is basically your IAM policies, who gets to what, how you get to what, roles, responsibility, threats at the bottom. We talk about guard duty and Macy's. Those are AW resources that takes that telemetry, which are the logs, and can look in there for TPT attacks, and different attacks are known inside your logs, and it can see if people are actually attacking you with those attacks, right? Once again, that's visibility analytics into that logs, right? In the back, right, we got the good stuff. We got the data, we got what apps, infrastructure, jet and version control, network, the rest, and internal micro-segmentation, right? So that's what we're talking about when we're talking about zero trust, right? Uh, this is one of my, I love this diagram for me. I usually break it up, man. And then I give a ton of, not a ton, I give a few zero trust presentations at work, right? So this is what I use for that. And over here too, you got corporate devices and unmanaged devices. Right? I usually just don't let unmanaged devices in my corporate network. I make it easy, right? But a lot of people got to bring your own. But those corporate devices, we know they're ours, so we know we can let them in our network. But we're gonna look at the risk of the device, right? And that's what we're gonna get into. So I did Cisco Duo. I think it's cheap for smaller companies. So I use that for the identity part. So let's get into it real quick. It's got MFA inside Cisco Duo. We're gonna look at it real quick. Not the marketer. Device trust, ensure all your devices be security standards, because you register your device, right? You're good. We put you in there, then you device. It's got adaptive access policies, which we were looking at. Block or grant access based on users' role, location, and more. Remote access provides secure access, and like my man said, it's got single sign-on. Right? So Duo checks you out, checks your device out, and it's going to do all that before I even let you into AWS. Right there, AWS partner, and I think it was like $3 a user. If you got under 5 users, I use it as for my living. So, and you're sitting up coming live. I use MFA to get in my test area. Right, helps me practice and get ready. Right. So we were just talking about that. Let's get on to the device health. You can protect what you can see. Gaining visibility into the device is the first step. Establishing device trust. It's essential aspect to strong zero trust strategy. Once again, all the vendors are throwing zero trust out. My man, Stroke Security just said that. Duo provides visibility in every single device in your network, enforces health, and at every single login attempt. Right, so those are your different devices. See everything with the green, good. Yellow means there's some risk. Red, no, you 4 versions behind on Windows. We ain't gonna let you on, right? So, and if you look, right, so when you put your device in, it tells you you got 615 devices are at an end of life for Windows. They're red. We're not gonna let them on. Everybody support us, 96%. Their stuff's green. And if you look, there's some more Mac OS, Windows, but the green, you can set this up. It tells you if you believe that device meets your risk requirement to get on your network, right? So Duo wants all your user devices managed or unmanaged. Looks at your browser, Java version flash, security health trends of all your devices and your business application. Latest security events may result in outdated devices, including a new browser plugin. Admin can use these reports to take action and notify users to update with self-remediation or block outdated device equipment. So the cool thing about Duo is if your device is out of Windows, it can force you a push to get your Windows updated so it'll be green, right? And that's what we were talking about. Remember, we were talking about identities, health, risk. Is it controlled by us? This Cisco Duo gives you a lot of that out the box, right? And this is the cost of it. 10 users are free. 3, you get passless single sign-on, MFA, telephony. So those are the things you can get with Duo. Like I said, I don't want to get too crazy, but what we want to get out of that is that green and red, right? It's going to give us a risk. And with that, we can tell it if it want to let us on our AWS network, right? So let's see who's in there. Wow. Salute to my man, Wally. I need to check my email. If anybody emailed me, I've been lacking. I'm about 4 days behind on email. I usually check before the stream. I got to do a better job. It's been a crazy week for me. Just some stuff kind of going my way and not going my way. Does AWS, I should check the devices or update and patch before I launch. Yeah. But remember, it's AWS is like this. It's a framework, right, JM? So we're going to use Duo to handle that for us. And we were doing that device checking with Duo, right? AWS has a ton of partners. They just don't want to deal with 10,000 workstations, right? So they let their partners do it. So you can do it with Windows Defender. I probably do another ZTA in a couple months, and I do Windows Defender on the front end. Shout out to Struggle Screen. We can do Mandiant, their security as a front end endpoint. So you can usually pick up anything. But for us on this one, JM, I would use Cisco Duo. Once again, it was $3. It was super cheap. I think we need the $6 one, most popular. So yeah, so now we would do Cisco Duo to do that for us in the front end. So shout out. I think Wally's laughing at me. I'm behind on my security. But see, at work, I got people to help me. While it's just me, I gotta get some peoples to help me when I'm at work. I had a staff. So once again, we were talking about this. That's what my man. We had Cisco Duo. Once again, we could use Windows Defenders. They got a ton of third-party people. So whatever you pick for your company, you handle that. Like I said, I like Cisco Duo. I use that for my lab. I shouldn't say that. People could try to hack me now, but I use Cisco Duo for my MFA, and I'm starting to do a little risk on my laptop. So once I get my own personal laptop set up again, I probably use Cisco Duo to do what we just looked at. Remember, we saw the red and green and gave us risk of our device, right? Two is AWS has something called Amazon Cognito. If you set up a web application, you need people log in. You don't want to commingle it with your corporate users. So you would use Amazon Cognito. It's just a utility with tables in it. You can have people sign in with the email, create a password. Or a cool thing is you can just have them use their Apple, Facebook, Google, or Amazon password. You went to websites, right? You say click on if you want to use your Facebook password. Just go through it right and then sync it up. Amazon Cognito with their user identity pools, you can set that up out the box, right? So that's one reason I read this because I know a lot of people, you don't want to mix those two. So just going to hit on that real quick. Then also with Amazon Cognito, you get access control to your AWS resources. You get standard-based authentication. You also, like we said, you can do OpenID, OpenAuth, and SAML2O. Those are for the programmers. You can use those. Adaptive authentication. Using advanced security features for your application to help protect your users and accounts and user experience. Detects unusual sign-in activity, such as sign-in attempts for new locations and new devices. Signs a risk score and activity, let you choose either prompt your users for verification or block their sign-in. You can send them a one-time generator or Google Authenticator. Right? Sometimes when you log in, it says, okay, this is a new device. Register that device so we know next time, right? But before they register a new device, what? You get a MFA code to put in your phone to register your new device, right? It's all built into Amazon Cognito, and hopefully, now I know in the next 2 weeks we'll be doing labs with a couple of these, so you can see how they work from a zero trust and a password and IAM perspective, right? Protection from compromised passwords. Advanced security. Cognito helps you protect applications' password from unauthorized access to their account using compromised credentials. Cognito detects users have entered credentials that have been compromised elsewhere. It prompts you to change your password. Like we talked about, it got APIs that are on the dark web that they know are bad IPs or these username has already been compromised, right? So that's one thing about AWS and those big sites. They have connections with the back end to get that information to you. Shout out to Engineering Cannabis. Yeah, man, I gotta have a team. I get facts, man. Facts. I think Nexus does something. Oh yeah. We use Nexus. For us, we use no, you're right. We use Nexus for our vulnerability scanners. So that's definitely those are known vulnerabilities that are in our software. The threat analysis are when you look through the logs, you see how people are moving inside your logs. That's a certain attack. But Nexus, we definitely use Nexus to say, okay, I'm using this Apache and it's not up to date, and these are the vulnerabilities for this version of Apache that I'm using. So those play together, JM. Those play together. So Let's see. I just want to make sure I'm following. So you're using Duo and Amazon got two different products that achieve the same. Nope, they're two different things. That's a great question, Kayla, and I'm glad you stopped. I was using Cisco Duo for my corporate users, right? That's gonna that work for me inside of corporate. I'm using Duo because I had an outside application and I had them logged in. So we got one website for marketing. We need to keep track of the people on the internet that's using our marketing campaign, and we're sending them some stuff. We don't want to mix those users together, Kayla. We don't want to mix our corporate users with our outside web users that we're using for outside products. Let me know if that makes sense, Kayla. So the Duo was for corporate users that work for us, right? You always know corporations have websites that they want people to sign on and do stuff with, right? Those are two different user base, Kayla. We don't want to mix those. So let me know if that makes sense, Kayla. But yeah, Cisco was for our corporate users. We use Amazon Cognito for our customer development when we're using some web campaign or digital marketing, right? Those are customers, and the other ones are our employees. Right? Shout out to Adrian Nash. It's all good. Glad you can join us. That was an excellent question. Okay, let me know if that makes sense. Um, so when we talk about policies, we saw in the middle. It talked about your policy engines and how you control them. I'm just going to hit these at a highlight. Like I said, we don't want to get too deep. Besides the talk, we got our identity policies, users and groups. We got our resource-based policies, meaning these are the policies I put on my EC2, my bucket, my file system. So the policies on a resource. So when I go to these file systems, these are resource policies. Identity based is on the user, right? So now if they come together, the user, PBO is trying to get on this S3 bucket, right? So the S3 bucket policy says, oh, PBO can actually get on there. He's in this group. And my user policy says, oh, yeah, he can get on those groups, right? So now those two has to match and correlate, right? So permission boundaries are used to manage the permission boundaries of AI and users. The policies defines the maximum for permissions that identity policies can grant, right? So what a permission policy does is if you're creating users for your test space, right? And you want to use them to test, I'm gonna put a permissions because you can't create a root user or a DBA, right? So I said a permission. This person's a developer, so they need to only have this maximum permission for the users they're creating to test their user base, right? Organization CP. So I said an organization, we're not gonna ever buy this type of units PC on demand or this type of resource, right? Or I could say only developers can only use micro resources because I don't want them to pick anything big. It's gonna cost too much, right? So I could put boundaries on their whole org and say this part of the org can only order this type of product or resource, right? Access control. Most people use session based, like we talked about. Past event session policies using the CIL or API session policies, limited permission, role, or identity. Right, and that's what we want to get to. Remember, Ultima is I really want to give you this session and say for this session you're only doing this type of work. Right, that's really where you want to get to. Just in time permissions. Right? So let's see, Kayla. So Cisco does and turn around. Yep, that is true. For my particular example, yes. Do they achieve the same thing though, managing that? They do. They do, but they're used for different part. But yeah, you are correct. They're used, but how I'm going to manage my internal users is going to be different than how I'm going to manage my external users, right? Because my external users, I'm probably not going to really give them very many AWS internal resources. Where my internal staff, they're going to have this kind of catalog. I got to give them a catalog to a ton of AWS resources, right? I got to really watch them, right? That's why my internet users, I'm just going to keep them in the Cognito tables. They get these resources and they get these 3 AWS resources they can touch. One of my external users too is I got to worry about, right? They're really in my corporate network, right? They're moving around. My Cognito users, I'm going to keep them incognito and I might give them maybe 2 subnets where my internal users, right? Because internal users, one of your biggest attack vectors are from your internal personnel because you trust them at a certain level because they're your employees, right? So they usually have a lot more resources they can get to and they can control. compared to your internal users. Oh, she got it. Cisco do is just verify internal device or good to be before they connect. Yep, no, that's true. They're gonna verify the internal devices. Yep, they're gonna check by health, right? Check the resources. They're gonna check the location, right? Because if they're not, if the Windows versions, because most people are on Windows, if their Windows version or their laptop old, Duo is gonna make them update before I even try to MFA into AWS, right? So that's correct in that scenario, JM. She got it too. So let's keep rolling. Yep. So we were talking about that. I should have put internal pictures, right? So we were talking about those are the policies we just went over, right up here. We just went over our AWS policies, right? We just touched them a little bit. That's the policy engine right here. What can you see? What can you get in? And how I do that, right? To validate you before you get into the back end with all the good stuff, right here. Your data, apps, infrastructure. So that policy engine, you got to verify before you get in. Shout out to JM, and two is you got to get past Cisco, right? Your MFA's got to be right. You got to identify. Cool thing is, right, it's checking your risk. It validated that that device was controlled by us. Remember, we looked at the red and green. That's the compliance state of that device too, to let it know if it should be able to get on our network. Right. So guard duty, one of AWS, it's intelligent threat detection. Guard duty is continuous security monitoring service that analyze and process data in your VPC logs, CloudTrail event logs, and records your API calls. The DNS logs provide analysis and detection using threat feed signature, anomaly detection, machine learning in your AWS cloud. Guard duty also helps you protect your data stored in S3, continuously monitors and profile your S3 data access to detect suspicious activity. Detection includes unusual geolocation. Right? So if certain people are supposed to be in the state you work at, but when they look, their IP's in Florida, right? Either they're on vacation or you got a hacker getting you, right? So guard duty is going to help you do that detection. Guard duty integrates threat intelligence feeds from CrowdStrike, Proofpoint, and AWS security to detect network API activity from known malicious IP addresses and domains. It uses machine learning to identify unknown and potential unauthorized malicious activity within your AWS environment, right? So that's what we're talking about, that threat intelligence. So let me go back to that. So bound here is at the bottom, threat intelligence, right? We're stepping our game up. Let me put that up there so I can see it. Oh, I need to move my big head out the way. Trying different things. Try that one. So yeah, so at the bottom is threat intelligence. So that's where we got guard duty, right? So we got all those logs, or Kayla said that telemetry, right? It's going to look through that telemetry to see if it sees any known attacks, or any TPTs or known threats. It's going to look through those logs. There's going to be a billion lines of logs if you work for a large agency with 400 VMs or 700 VMs, 600 EC2s, 400 S3 buckets, right? You're going to have a ton of telemetry, right? So guard duty is going to look through that telemetry and see if it sees anything that looks funny, right? So that's the beauty of that. So right down there, threat intelligence, right? So I kind of like to walk through this diagram and talk about which AWS service we're going to use to read each one, right? And two is Azure's got theirs, Google, and we've been doing this on-prem for a ton of years, right? Now, AWS makes it a little easier for me to set up a SOC and go through that and set up the TBT. I just call a service and say, here, look through the logs, right? And I could just pay it it charges how many hours it runs. So I'm trying to be cheap. I'm trying to set up a lab where I run it at the end of the month for 12 hours, shut it down, right? So if we get attacked in the 5th month, if we don't pick it up, we won't find it out to the end of the month, right? But I'm not paying every day, right, for those scans, right? So, right. So let's go. She got it. So many acronyms. You are correct. I need to work on that, Miss Nash. You are 100% right. As an old IT guy, we talk about that. I am acronym, especially when you work on DoD. It took me This is a true story. It took me 3 months to figure out what people were saying at DoD. People use so many acronyms. So let's keep rolling. I want to keep us to so micro-segmentation, right? AWS provides capabilities using built-in security groups. The key successful implementation of micro-segmentation is due to understand and address micro-segmentation challenges. Forcing micro-segmentation controls different applications within the same environment. A security group acts as a virtual firewall controlling the traffic that is allowed to reach and leave resources that are associated with it. For example, after you associate a security group with an EC2, it controls the inbound and outbound traffic to that instance, right? When you create a VPC, it comes with a default security group. You can create additional security groups, each for your VPC. You can associate a security group only with the resource in the VPC in which it was created. For a security group, you have rules that controls traffic based on the protocol and port numbers that separate sets of users inbound and outbound traffic. Let's see what that looks like, right? I gotta figure out. So at the top, there's our security group over here. So when you come in from the internet, you get routed to your route table, your subnet one. Over here could be web servers. So we got security groups on these web servers, right? So on these security groups on the web server, we can say we only let traffic in from port 80 and port 443, right? HTTP and HTTPS. That's the only traffic we letting in. Then on top of that, in the security group, we can say we're only letting traffic come in from the load balancer. The load balancer at the top, right? It's going to load balance between these two AZs. We can say this security group can only take traffic from that particular router. So if somebody's over here and they try to get a direct scan on our instance, right? Trying to do reconnaissance, they won't be able to see that the security group is going to actually block those scans and block that attack, right? So that's why you use security group. Then over here we have, I would say these would be our website. Now over here we have an application server and a database, right? Security group for each one of those. So when my web server is trying to go to my app server, this security group could say, oh, we're only going to let in 8080, which is Tomcat port, right, coming from this particular web server. So the Apache calls the Tomcat, right? So it says only let traffic coming in from our web server on port 80 can get to this instance, right? Then when this app server tries to insert into this database, right, we can only say this security group would only let traffic in for that one, right? So that's how we build micro-segmentation, right? Even though these are subnets, only this security group will get traffic from this load balancer. Only this security group can talk to the application security group. The application security group can only talk to the database security group. So what happens is if a hacker gets on there and they're not coming from the right location, right, they will not be able to get to that resource, right? That's micro-segmentation. In the old days, this used to be one flat network. You just go where you want to go or attack who you want to attack. Now we segmented it to smaller segments and who can talk to who and how that's going to operate, right? So another part of zero trust is signing your API request, so let's see. So what is signing, right? So even when I send off a request and I need to get there, right? Signing. Every day, each and every customer interacts confidentially and securely with AWS, making billions of API calls over a diverse set of public and private network. Each one of these signed API requests is individually authenticated and authorized every single time at the rates of millions of requests per second globally. So the use of network level encryption, TLS, combined with powerful cryptographic capability of signing secures the resources without any regards to trustworthiness of the network. So when I make a request to AWS inside of AWS from that request, they sign it in my behalf on the back end, right? So you got create canonical request, create a string to sign, calculate the signature, then you get it, right? So what happens is when you use that signing, when I sign it, my receiver expects to see this signature on. So if a hacker gets in there and they try to request something, if they didn't sign it, and my particular resource is looking for something signed, right, it will reject that resource. Because remember when it talked about session, right, and identification. This is a way to identify a session that you sign in it, and it is you, right? Sometimes hackers could get your password, use a different machine, steal your token, but if they don't know to sign that request, that's another giveaway saying it's not coming from you, right? In-depth, multiple occurrence of that, um, and how you attack. So behind the scenes, this is the programming requested token. Shout out to JM. Once again, we talk tokens. You're gonna validate it. Success for failure comes back. Assuming a role, right? What role are we trying to do and what work we're doing? You get a token for that coming from the STS, right? Credential providers. You get signed back to the program. It lets you know if it was valid or not coming from your AWS AIM. The cool thing is your SDK or programming language is behind the scene. You just call it and it does all that behind the scenes for you, right? And that's one thing about zero trust, right? We got layers of this and how, and we're gonna lab about this and show this in real life, in the future. When we start labbing. So what does it look like from top to bottom to start, right? So you're coming in from the internet, Route 53, web application firewall, your load balancer, your keys, right? This is your web tier, network load balancer, uh, comes to your application tier, and at the bottom is your database. But inside, like we talked about, you got your layer 7. Like Kayla said, we got a ton of logs coming from each one of these, right? So we can get the baseline. KMS, talking about keys and signatures, right? So here, like I said, this is just a high level. This is AWS's basis. They call it a web architecture security pillar. This is the design they recommend that you do. And we're going to slowly start labbing this and breaking out each one of these layers so we can see it and we can get comfortable with it, right? So what is Macy's? Another one of those cybersecurity services we can use. It's a fully managed data security and privacy service that uses machine learning and pattern matching to discover and protect your sensitive data, right? So if it sees a bank account, credit card, checking account, right? They all start a certain way or move a certain way, right? Organization manages a growing volume of data, identifying, protecting their sensitive data as scales become increasingly complex and expensive, time consuming. Macy automates the discovery of sensitive data at scale and lowers the cost of protecting. Macy automates provide inventory of S3 buckets, including a list of unencrypted buckets, publicly accessible buckets, buckets shared with AWS accounts and defined by AWS organization. Macy applies machine learning and pattern matching techniques to the buckets you select to identify and alert you to sensitive data, such as a personally identifiable PII, right? Once again, which is bank account, credit card numbers. It scans it. It knows how those numbers will look, right? So if somebody tries to send one out, you can say block it, right? If it's not been approved or if it's not coming from a certain location, right? So, and we talked about this last week, so we're going to talk about once again encryption was in the well informed. So we talked about encrypting your MySQL database, protect your data. Once again, one of the security pillars. So that's the Macy was scanning that S3 bucket at the top, right? Once again, coming from the internet, Route 53 is your DNS, HTTPS, load balancer, HTTPS, load balancer into your EC2, Linux, Windows. Want all that encrypted, connecting to the database. That information is encrypted too, right? So we just said that there. Once again, on your zero trust, the things you want to protect, that's also included in zero trust. Your network, your data at rest, your data in transit, your data in memory. Right. All that protection means you want to encrypt it. Right. So when you unencrypt it, you want to send it where it needs to send. When somebody sends you something, you're going to read it, work it. Once you're done with it, you're going to encrypt it at rest. So if somebody comes through and steals it and try to view it, right, they can't because that data is encrypted. We talked about this Zero Trust, load balancer in the public network. We just everything in red. LB should be left in the public subnet. We were talking about that up there. NAT gateway. You just want all that stuff encrypted. So we talked about the NAT gateway there. You want all your web server not to be in the public network, right? Because all the bad guys can scan the public network, right? So you want all your resources in a private network, and all that stuff once again is being encrypted, protecting your network. Data at rest, you need to set up your database to be independently enable encryption. So if you saving your data on the file system network, uh, NoSQL database, machine learning database, it all needs to be encrypted at rest. So um, data in transit, want to use AWS Certificate Manager, supports TLS. So any data in transit in here, you just want to have it encrypted at rest. I'm skimming this. We went over this last week, so I didn't want to delve into it. So anything when you move data, save data, uh, it just needs to be encrypted in transit, at rest, and in motion, right? And in memory, right? Import a security best practices. You should allow traffic to your RDS database from your instances only. Therefore, make sure security groups will allow traffic from your auto scaling group, right? RDS console, set up security group that has CyberSecurity IP inbound. So we were talking about security groups and what can talk to what. So for your database, you just want to make sure it's behind a firewall. Your firewall is controlling the network, and what can talk to your firewall, right? Your web servers usually don't talk to your database, your app servers do, right? So that's micro-segmentation. We're segmenting what can talk to what in our network. Uh, that shows just quick that users come in, they're coming in. We did a WordPress, that's super popular. So in your WordPress, it has a backend database. Only these EC2 Unix boxes for your WordPress can talk to your WordPress MySQL database, right? So anything else will be blocked, right? And in the bottom, let me get my big head out of there. Oh, let's go back. So once again, we know your WordPress allows these SSH and HTTP coming from the user. And when your WordPress calls your RDS, we know it's going to call on port 3306 from that EC2 instance. So the only thing we letting inside that firewall will be coming from that EC2. Anything else will be blocked, right? That's a version of micro segmentation, right? So what can talk to what and when you can talk to it, right? Part of it's encryption, part of it's firewalls, part of it's signing your thing, but not really anything new, to be honest. On that, they're just saying using encryption and use it in this micro segmentation. So it's not a new encryption yet. It's actually just AES 256 that's been validated. They call it FIPS, engineering cannabis, meaning the government just approved it. But now it's the same one I've been learning for 6 or 7 years. So once again, that's the default architecture. I want to hub on a two line. We've been going for an hour, so that's it. And the other thing too is people are talking about multi cloud setups, and this is Azure on one side and AWS. A lot of companies use Active Directory in the cloud from Azure. You can actually use that for authentication and authorization. Then shout out to JM. You get your SSO token slash endpoint passed to you, and once that's validated in Azure, it gives you a token and it lets you into your AWS resources, right? So that way you don't have to keep authenticated in two places, right? You will lose your Azure for your authentication, your authorization coming from your Azure Active Directory. Your Azure Active Directory is going to sync to your on-prem Active Directory, right? So it's going to keep your permissions up. So the user logs on, gets their token and their permissions, and that'll let them go onto their AWS service provider. So use Microsoft for identity provider at the top, then you use their AWS for your services that you prefer to use from them, right? So that would be your kind of a multi-cloud strategy, right? So once again, kind of the same thing. Azure cloud using Azure Active Directory Enterprise, the agents. Then once again, we're using AWS Cloud to authenticate over that. Right? So that's it. I'm gonna drop the link while I kind of wrap up. But like I said, I want to touch in on a high level. I don't want to get too crazy. I taught at a local university for 10 years, so I could pontificate with the best of them. So let's see what Kayla has. Does it mean it's useful to learn both Azure and AWS or specialize in one? It's always the more you learn, the best. I would specialize first, Kayla. You get the bag by specializing, right? So I'm specializing in AWS. Right. I'm moving from my old compliance to the cloud is my next 10-year bag. I'll be 54 this year. I got 10 more years. So AWS I'm trying to specialize in AWS to get the bag. But I believe when you get architecture and you get to a certain level where you're the architecture of a Fortune 500 company, I think you're going to need to know multi-cloud, the difference in those clouds. And even if you're hiring consultants, you got enough to know. You need to know, understand enough to know that you're not getting nobody's trying to pull the wool over your eye, trick you. So I think you need to be on a multi-cloud understanding, right? You can be especially in one, but I think you need to understand the basis of one. And usually they're me learning, they're pretty much similar, but I think you should specialize, but I think you need to understand really all three, Google, Azure, and AWS, right? Because in the future, I think people are going to have multi-cloud, and whatever the best services they provide, they're going to stitch them together. Slide out to Oracle Cloud, Rackspace. There's a lot of specialty clouds that are coming up for special things. So I think you're going to need to figure out how to integrate those and use the best of breed of both things. So, with multi-cap, are you seeing a problem in security? Are you seeing it more secure? Oh, I see a problem in security engineering cannabis. I think both of them are good. I think the people trying to stitch the security together is struggling. So I see a security problem. Like we talked about, Bitcoin is not getting hacked. It's when they selling it up with other exchanges. I'm going Bitcoin to Ethereum and those type of stuff. It's not Bitcoin or Ethereum hack. It's when you try to exchange those coins, right? The connector things, or whatever you call those, I think are getting hacked more than the individual coin things. And I think that's the same thing's going to happen in the cloud at first, right? I think Azure is secure. I think AWS, but when you try to integrate them, right, I think those integration points are the attack points. Engineering cannabis. What do you think of Red Hat certification? Oh yeah. Because I'm labbing, and I'm a lab next week. Is even though it's AWS Linux, it's really a fork of Red Hat. So when I'm in there, like, and we're going, I had to own chmod, I had to change the user, I had to root. All those are basic Unix commands, JM. You got to understand those. Even though I got AWS certifications, but they don't really go in. So when if you're gonna pick Linux for your EC2s, and you need to get in there and you need to install stuff on there, you still got to understand the individual instance, which is a Linux instance, right? So, and I'm gonna go through. I installed a web server as root. And once I figured out, I'm like, oh my God, I started as root, right? I got to go in, I got to change the owner from root to Apache, change the group to Apache, make sure you don't log on. I log on with my credentials, then I switch users to the users that Tomcat users that's running their web application. If you don't understand that at a basic level, JM, you can't really work in that environment, right? I ain't gonna say that. That's when you start specializing and making a bag, right? So when I'm in a meeting, I'm like, okay, we in Linux. We need to root your own, right? Okay, we need to switch users. We need to get the FACL. We need to set security like that. Okay, that user is a service user. It's not logging on, so we're not gonna give it a password. But we need to make a service account for it, right? So if you don't know what those terms mean, JM, you're not, So I think you need that specially. Either it doesn't. If you're doing Unix, you need Red Hat. If you're doing Windows, you need whatever that certification. I do a little both, right? Like I specialized in Unix for 10 years at DoD, right? So I'm comfortable in that environment, right? For me too is I'm old, right? So I got experience in Linux, right? So a lot of times people don't expect me to have a certification and everything because I got experience. But if you only got 2 or 3 years, the certification validates your understanding of that environment. So let me know, JM. I was rattling. Let me know if that makes sense. I was rattling, but yeah, I think you need that. So, but once again, we just wanted to touch on NIST 800-207. My man works for, I don't want to give out his company. I let it struggle. He works for a big consulting company. They're talking about zero trust, right? So you need to, especially in the federal space, right? And two is, and engineering cannabis will tell you, struggle security. But there's a lot of money in the federal space when you need to know these terminologies, right? When people talk zero trust, oh, I understand that. Even if it's at a base level, I understand segmentation. We were talking about, I understand encryption. I understand we were talking about identity, right? Okay. What's the health of it? Who owns it? Do we control it? What's the risk of it, right? If it's not fully patched, is that 90%? Are we going to let it on the network? We're just going to let it on these particular backends. When you have a basic understanding of that, right, you can have intelligent conversations, and that's how you get the bag, and that's how you move up in your career. The weird thing is I don't even touch computers much anymore. I talk about stuff like this to the CISO and the CIO, right? Because the president mentions it, right? And federal agencies, HIPAA, Health and Hospital, FERPA, when they start saying you need to do zero trust, right? Executives want to understand, well, what is zero trust? Well, is that going to cost me more money? Do we need to buy more equipment? What actually is that? My man was just riding. He going to talk to some customers. Shout out to Struggles Security. Don't have no accident. He's driving one of his customers to talk about zero trust because at that level, they're hearing it. So you got to take, and I need to work on this. I got to explain technical things we just went over in a business format so they can understand it and figure out what their budget is for the year, right? And that's, when you say I need to do zero trust, I need a policy engine. Okay, do we have one? Is that something we got to buy? Oh, and two is remember to framework. Azure's got their zero trust. AWS got a zero trust. NXX is VMware. They got a zero trust, right? So two is you can pick a product and try to use their whole suite, or most people gonna do best of breed, right? We talk micro-segmentation. Micro-segmentation could be a Windows firewall. If you're a small company, you just got 10 VMs in your whole company. I don't need to buy this and that. I don't need to buy NXX. I don't need to buy Cisco. I can just put up Windows firewall and I control all my east and west traffic. I can use Windows Defender in front of that, and I could probably get a zero trust. But remember, I only got 10 instances, right? So I can really brute force that. I don't need a ton of automation. I don't need a ton of telemetry, right? I just got 10 servers. I can make that work, right? I'm a dinky company. Now, when I'm DOD and I got 5,000 VMs, right? That's a different animal, right? So, yeah, I think that's a lost art, JM. I'm I'm sure you. I'm from the old school too, so I just want to put that at JM. And Tam is from that. She always pumping that out is. Um, in AWS, you can do a lot of stuff and never really touch an OS. Windows are out, but when you actually, depending on what job you're trying to do, JM, like I want to be an architect, but I want to go all the way down to SIPSOS, meaning I can design it and I can roll my sleeve up and say, okay, on this Linux, I got this VM. I wanted to have this version. I want to send it these like this telemetry to S3 bucket. I want to put Macy's up and guard duty to go through it. So it depends on what level you want to be at, JM. I want to, like she always says, I want to go down to bare metal, right? I want to be able to, which I can, I don't do. I can install a Linux OS and I can configure it, right? Uh, I might struggle when I get to the end, when I got to get to the EFS block and I got to divvy up the blocks to attach it to the Linux, right? That's a whole different game. But I like to understand it at that level, James. So when I have a conversation with my Linux guy who I got on speed dial, I can have a decent conversation with him. Now I'm not carving up the Windows disk, right, and we sharing it among 400 VMs, right? I'm not doing that, but I think so. For me, I like to be at that level, JM. From that, I think shout out to Tam. She kind of agree with that. So that's kind of the level I'm thinking of, JM. To be honest, like I said, I was doing some AWS labs, and it took me a minute. I had to actually go on Linux because I was uh, trying to use Cloud Formation and the data source to automatically build a web server on the fly, right? Yum it, update it, build a website, build a web page. And when I click on it, it automatically come up and say, this is the server, this is the IP, right? It took me a minute to figure out, oh, it never got built on, on that Linux because I was using it as a regular user and installing Apache. That's a low port product. I gotta sudo as the admin, right? If I never do Linux, I would have never figured that out, JM. It did take me a couple hours to figure it out. I'm like, damn, what happened? Right? I had to go look at it, right? So for me, JM, that's why I do that, right? So then when I need those skills, like I said, it took me, I'm like, well, let me see if the web server's out there. I'm making an assumption and I put this in the user data and it got built. I went out there, I looked in the logs, and we're gonna do that in the lab. I'm gonna make it fail, look in the logs where you can see, oh, this got hung on Yum because I didn't have the right bash shell set up, right? Unless you have Linux skills, you can't debug that JM, right? So when I need those skills, even though now, and two is it gives you enough to at least I can Google them, right? If you don't have any basic skills, you don't even know what to Google to look at it, right? So that's kind of what I'm on that, JM. So I'll let you decide. Two is depending on the cost, I would do it. Like I said, there's a lot of times when I have to get on that box and just kind of move around and kind of figure out what's going on, especially as a consultant. That's one of my skills I like to be able to do, right? Just do basic stuff. Go in, nest that A, see what ports are running, PS-EF, see what processes are running. And like I said, we're going to lab some of this and just see how it works, right? You need those skills to be able to do that, right? Like I said, I did it for a couple hours and somebody said, just log on the box and see if the web server's on. I'm like, well, shit, it's not getting built. So what happened, right? Too many people focusing on tools because too many tools, but no baseline. Yeah, two is like engineering candidates. That's that fundamentals I use every day, Jay. I've been using that for 20 years, right? And the crazy thing is, and me and Tim was discussing that. Tim is Linux, Unix, SME. I am not that. I probably put myself at the top of the medium category, but most people don't have those base skills. But I can go on a box, I can CD, I can VI. Like I said, I have PS-EF. I can look at what files are open, right? If it's a web server on port 80 should be listening, right? Or if I do PS-EF, I should see HTTPD as a process running inside my process. If my process it's not working, right? So then, I can go in the logs, I can look. But if you don't have those basic skills, JM, you can't do that, right? And sometimes, until I work for old boss, he always and I've always gone by this model. If you don't have any tools and you just need to sit down at the command prompt, no point and click, you got to roll your sleeves up. Can you do your work? I always say, can you get down? Right. So I just want to always have that skills. I don't need nothing, man. I just need a command line, a Linux command. I got about 20 commands in my arsenal, JM. So I can, like I said, PS-EF, so I can look at open stats. I can look at groups of users. I can look at the password table. I can look at the group table. I got about 20 things I can pull out of my bag, JM. So that's why I believe that. Shout out to just kind of going on engineering cannabis. Just my baseline fundamental skills, man. If I'm stuck on site, can I get down? So I might make that a series, engineering cannabis. Can you get down? Right. I had an old guy, I'm having him on my channel. He was just always like that. He said, if we're on site and you don't have a SQL developer and you don't have this Linux and you don't have a Google, can you work? I'm like, so, when he paid you a lot of money, he wants you to be able to sit at a terminal and just be able to type it up. So I'm still VIing, man. People using Vim. I still use VI Linux. That's how old I am. But shout out to my chat, man. I'm over here pontificating, man. I think Tuesday, you will see a schedule. I think I'm gonna go from mainframe to AWS. They got me thinking, just going from putting tapes on in a tape room to passing the AWS associate architect degrees in the last 30 years. What does that look like? Even what does that feel like? Just on the grind and studying. So let me know if you got any more questions. I dropped the link. I'll drop it again if you want to come up and chat it up. That's really all I got. Shout out to my man, Struggle Security. I'm sure we chop it up a little bit. Like I said, that's for anybody on here. People, I get sent people all the time. Like, hi, send me something, right? So I'm always gonna while he's laughing at me. It might take me a week to get back with you, but that's one reason I came on YouTube to be able to help you, right? If you get stuck, I was stuck in 1990. There was no Google, there was no Reddit. You just was pulling books off shelves. So I came here to help people, right? And I know a lot of people, sometimes feel like they're all alone. And I just want to let you know that I'm here. You're not alone. So I'm always got. Are you doing anything special for 4th of July? Just eating, just eating. I probably go live or something. Like I said, I've been living every day. Like I said, getting my AWS certs. I think I got 4 now, so I'm trying to get my AWS skills up. I got an interview with Deloitte. They reached out to me, so trying to see if I'm gonna go work for the big Deloitte, getting the big matrix or not. So let's see what they can. Oh, you're welcome. I'm glad you enjoyed it. Like I said, I usually stream every Sunday at 3. Like I said, I'm kind of learning AWS. Well, not kind of learning. I did it from insurance and compliance. So now I want to do it from building. So I want to bring all that out to you. I know a lot of people trying to get into the cloud and get those skills. And too, y'all can watch me struggle. And there's, things I progress on. Once again, though, I passed 4 AWS certs. So I'm a little ecstatic. I've been putting it in. But, I'm kind of one of those nerdy college guys. I know people who know SQL, Python, but can understand how to compute, understand variance, and how correlation. Facts. But yeah, but no, I'm not doing anything special, JM. I'm single, divorced for about a decade. I'm just relaxed. I probably go check on my grandkids, make my son cook a little bit, give me a little plate. I need to go on a diet, man. I always every country. Oh yeah, Deloitte's the big monster, man. Deloitte, Booz Allen, Price Waterhouse Cooper. That's about 3 or 4 of those guys. Yeah, they just and it's where I think they got 130,000 employees. They told so. I think they got 5 big practices. So I was looking at the DevSecOps. If you look back in my playlist, I've been talking about that from AWS perspective. Assurance, cloud architect. There was one other division, so they're kind of seeing which division they think. Yep, Accenture. You're right, Black Dub. Accenture. Those are kind of I'm calling them the matrix, the big boys. 100,000 employees, right? So yeah, I'm reaching out with Deloitte. Of course, they take forever. So we once again we'll see. I'll keep you abreast. I work for a small security company. I'm pretty happy with them. I'm just gonna go on a bench. I've never been on a bench in a company, so I'm a little perplexed. A bench is when you're as a consulting company have you at the client. The client says, "Okay, we're not renewing your contract." Cool thing is, I was at this client for 10 years. They offered me a government job at a decent salary. I just make a lot more than what state employees make, right? So I was very happy. They gave me probably 6 or 7 months lead time, letting me know they weren't going to renew my contract. So now I got to make some decisions on what I want to do, right? So that's all good. So I've just never been a bench. Of course, my company, they're looking at other contracts for them. They're a small company. They're not like Deloitte. They got, 10,000 2,000 companies in all over the world where they can put you at, right? So it's a deep experience. So I just want to make sure my ducks are in a row in case, something goes left, right? Left meaning they fire me, right? But it's all good. That's part of the game. I understand what consulting and contracting is all about, right? So, uh oh, Black Dub. I'm on the bench right now. He's not. Yeah, that's kind of what I've been doing, man. I've actually been looking at Cap Gemini. A good friend of mine works at Cap Gemini. He said he was going to put me in for a few things. I think he buys talent. I don't want to call it a hiring manager, but yeah, Cap Gemini. They not as big as those guys, but Cap Gemini ain't tiny either though. So Cap Gemini is up there. So yeah, I've been certain up. What search you going for, Black Dub? So yeah, I've been starting up on mine too. I've been going for the AWS suite. I got, like I said, I got 5 AWSs. I'm going. This is what I said I was going to start studying for the database specialty in AWS. Nobody's ever heard of that. Long story short, I did an Oracle database for 10 years in the game, so I love databases. So that's one reason I think I can go ahead and get the AWS database. And anything you do, you insert into a database. No SQL time, whatever's going to insert in a database. No, that's cool. That's cool. Sure. I can't remember if he was on a live stream. A lot of people. What was that? I think was that wasn't Helmet. Who had some? A lot of people have free AWS certification. Something you can sign up for vouchers on a live stream. So if you wasn't on the, I can't remember Black Dub. I'm getting old, man. I'm blaming everything on my age. But yeah, no, that's AWS is big time. Do they? I don't think does AWS have any testers? Let's bring them up. I was just looking at. Let's bring them up. So, let's bring the certifications up real quick. While we talking about them, I was just looking at them online. Um, so yeah, here's the matrix I was using. There's not a pen test on here, Black Dub. I don't see. This is the ones I were looking at. The ones I was using. Yeah, Salesforce. I'm mad because a good friend of mine work at Salesforce. I was on a second interview and they got a hiring freeze. I meant to hurt my little feelings. Let me drop a link for. Yeah. Yep, Helmet has that. Oh wow, how many do they got now? Like I said, one of my good friends are there. So he's looking for me. Let me make this one bigger. Okay, let me make that one. That's not the one I wanted. It's not the one I wanted. So yeah, that's the one I was looking at. Let me see. Okay. I'm over here struggling. Let me see. What did I do? Where did my I think I hit some on my let me stop sharing and see what I no, that's fine. Hold on, I'm trying to get my little setup back up. I done messed it up, which is not uncommon for me. Let's see. That looks good. Okay. Okay, that's better. My fault. Let me get that back up. I'm struggling over here. Struggling. Okay, let's see. Thanks, Helmet. 30. I can't even imagine a company with 300,000. Yeah, Black Dub, that's that. Let me make that a little bigger. There's no pen test on there. They might have some, but for their what now they might have a class on it, but what they actually you can search for in AWS is that. Um, I'm not a huge Lenovo fan. I'm anything made, everything's made overseas. Though I don't know why I say that. They okay. I don't really I do all my labbing up in AWS, so I don't really need a lot of power anymore, JM. So I could pretty much use anything. Like I said, I do most of my stuff labbing in AWS, so I'm using their power, spinning up, 4 or 5 EC2 instances, setting up a EFS file system connected to a DynamoDB database, and like we talked about, setting up their security and talking about micro-segmentation. So Black Dove, here's the top. You got your AWS Cloud Formation at the bottom. You got your 3 associate architect ones. Then you got your professional ones. Uh, DevOps has kind of been catching my eye, kind of my background. I think I'm maybe try to study for the DevOps professional. I heard those professional ones are killer. Then the other part of that is shout out to Engineering Cannabis. I don't know if you see that. I had the big data and the machine learning certificates in there too. I got the security one. I don't see the database one though, so they missing a few. Uh, so they added a database to this is old database. So I got the cloud formation solution architect, developer, and the security one. Those are the ones I have currently. I'm thinking about studying for the sysops, and they have a database security Black Dove. So that's the one I've been looking at right now. So, um, but Azure is right up there with AWS, especially in the government sector. Because if you got Active Directory and Outlook and Office 365, that's the first thing you're gonna push to Azure Cloud and get you rocking and rolling, right? So that's definitely a move to make. But Black Dove. So those are the kind of the certs, but obviously there's a few missing because I know database specialty is one. So I'm thinking to do because I want to do DevSecOps. So I think I'm gonna get the DevOps cert part. Then I got the security specialty part. So I'm gonna try to I'm gonna be a DevSecOps expert. Nah, I'll just play it, just living every day, man. So but yeah, I want to just wish everybody have a great fourth. Like I said, I'm just like I said, I've never been on a bench. Shout out to Black Dove. So I got it. But once again, too, it's like shout out to Black Heights. I'm starting networking and meeting with people. I reached out to our cloud division in our company. So I'm gonna meet with him and security guy. And I told him we should start doing more DevSecOps. So I'm gonna try to lead that in my small security company I work for. And hopefully in the next couple of years, I might try to start my own cloud security company and just see what I could do in that area. And just try to make my own way, I guess. But we'll see. Get your certs on, get your lab on. Shout out to Engineering Cannabis. You want to work on your foundational skills and just continue to learn. I'll probably take a little break and I'm gonna be spinning up an auto scaling group with the load balancer, authenticating what we just saw to Cognito, right? So we got a website gonna authenticate to the load balancer. Once it knows you're not authenticated, it's gonna send you to Cognito. You're gonna sign up, get an email, authenticate yourself. Then it's gonna sign up. Then you be able to log back in and get to a few servers inside of AWS, so we can lab every day and really do this stuff for real. But that's all I got. That's all I got. Everybody have a nice weekend, which is almost over. Monday's almost here. Oh, people got to drive into the office. I'm not happy. No, that's all good. I got to go in the office. This is my last week. Like I said, this client, I've been there 10 years. They supposed to be taking me out to a nice lunch. I'm like, dude, y'all defeat my diet. So let's see. Got some walking and stretching done this week. I appreciate that, man. I definitely need to do that. But I'm out. I'm sure I'm gonna see y'all on these YouTube streets. I try to be, y'all know I'm gonna be here hopefully next Sunday at 3. I gotta figure out what I'm gonna talk about. I might live next week, so we gotta figure out what we're gonna talk about. Like I said, Zero Trust just trying to jump in my mind. I was actually on a Zero Trust. They were talking more government regulations and stuff. So I just wanted to get a little closer to the ground. What services we would use, how we would use them, and the next step, of course, is labbing. So we're gonna get there. I'm out. Everybody have a nice weekend. Happy Monday. I'll see you on these new YouTube streets. I don't want to break them, hell, man. I don't want to break them. But yeah, everybody have a nice weekend, and I'm out of here, man. Reach out, Professor Blackops at gmail.com. I promise I'll do a better thing checking my email. I got to do better. I see y'all these YouTube streets. Have a good day.